This is Tuesday, June 11th, room 1060, and this is the Economic Development Committee. It's my honor to chair this august body, and I'm joined by my colleague, Maria Rodriguez. We will proceed with the general comment, and it looks like Wayne from Encino.
Mr. Chair, 2 minutes for multiple and then
Yes.
1 minute for general public
That's
comment?
correct. 2 minutes for multiple and
That's right. So everybody's favorite website, Two Urban Girls.
subject.
What's that? Well, the chair of this committee is the subject matter because the chair of this committee needs not to be holding these meetings and chairing them when you have a conflict of interest, don't you? And apparently there's a copy of a claim form by a Mrs. Delbert Richardson of Inglewood, sworn under penalty of perjury that from 2015 to 2017 was legally married to a former councilman of the Inglewood City Council known as Curran D. Price Jr. And that Curran D. Price Jr. doesn't live in the city of LA. He has a mailing address in the city of Inglewood. Now, we'd like to know more about this. Mr. City Attorney, wouldn't we like to know more about this? Because if that is true,
I don't see how this is on the agenda.
you can't,
not on the
under
agenda.
color of authority,
on the agenda.
under the city charter and under the laws of the state of California, he cannot chair this meeting because he has a conflict of interest involving economic development questions in the city of Los Angeles. The entire thing's a fraud. And you see, you're making decisions in our city when in fact your interests lie in another city and always have since the day you took office in this city. Projects, the Rams project, Raiders, and then we had information that there were bids with the city to get 2 NFL teams, and the city of Inglewood somehow knew what the numbers were and topped our bid and got both the Rams and the Chargers. How'd that happen? How did that happen? I don't know how it happened. I guess it was an act of God. Because I guess
Okay, 1 minute for
see, the mayor of Inglewood,
general public.
yeah, the mayor of Inglewood, Mayor Butts, apparently is clairvoyant. The man can see the future. Because apparently, inside your closed session items, you apparently made offers to the NFL for a project involving Farmers Field and another project to build a stadium for the Clippers in the San Fernando Valley. All those numbers were known to your city attorney and your committees, and yet somehow this clairvoyant miracle worker knew what the numbers were and bid over the city of Los Angeles' offer and got all the projects for his city. It couldn't have been anything else but a miracle, right? Of course. And so now, tonight, the City Council of Inglewood will meet tonight, and they will discuss the $25,000 claim. And Mr. Price will probably need to be there with counsel because they may ask him some
Okay,
questions.
thank you. With that, we'll close public comment, and we will move on to the agenda. Members, member, we're going to continue item 9, unless you've got a violent objection. And we will approve items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on consent. There's no objection. Seeing none, that will be the order. Okay, Mr. Clerk, where are we?
We're at item number 1, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to read that?
Yes, please.
Item number 1 is a report from the Economic and Workforce Development Department and the City Administrative Officer relative to the City Revolving Loan Fund Administrative Plan of the United States Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration Financial Assistance Award. This has also been referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay, it's a mouthful. Who's coming up?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Shafi Amir with the City Administrative Officer, and we have two representatives from EWDD. I can go ahead and do our presentation
Yes, please.
for our report. Before you is our report on EWDD's transmittal regarding the draft administrative plan to establish a city revolving loan fund, the RLF program, for businesses as agreed with the federal U.S. Economic Development Administration, EDA, Department of Commerce. The CEO recommends approval of EWDD's draft admin plan with some revisions as described in the CAO report. We also recommend approval of EWDD's request to transfer $1.2 million from the current year unappropriated balance budget to EWDD. These funds were budgeted for the RLF program pending an administrative plan, which EWDD has, the draft is attached to the CAO report as well as EWDD's transmittal. As background, last year in June 2018, Council authorized EWDD to execute an agreement with the EDA to reestablish the previous city revolving loan fund program using city funds for the capital base in the total amount of $4.6 million. With last year's transfer of $1.2 million from the UB, the unappropriated balance, to EWDD, EWDD currently has on hand $2.1 million needed for the capital base. With the approval of the current year UB, which is in the recommendations of the CAO report, EWDD will have a total of $3.3 million in funding. And then once EDA provides final approval of the admin plan, EWDD can initiate the RLF program and start the lending. An additional $1.3 million has been approved and budgeted in the adopted fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. With this amount next fiscal year, EWDD will have the full $4.6 million pledged for this for the capital base for the program. The proposed RLF will be implemented by current EWDD staff, including outreach, intake of all applications, and underwriting. EWDD is requesting no new positions. A loan committee headed by the general manager of EWDD will be formed to review applications and approve loans. The draft admin plan proposes loans ranging from $50,000 to $700,000, and exceptions for loans exceeding $700,000 will be taken on a case-by-case basis. The city's previous EDA RLF program became defunct due to a prolonged period of non-compliance with EDA requirements, and that was through the 1990s when it finally became defunct, the previous program. It was implemented in the mayor's office previously and then by an outside contractor. For the new proposed RLF program, EWDD will be responsible for maintaining adequate oversight and reporting in order to comply with EDA requirements governing the program. Upon review of EWDD's admin plan by both the CAO and the City Attorney's Office, the CAO recommends revisions described on page 7 of our report. And details about the proposed RLF are included in the CAO report and its attached admin plan as well as the program term sheet. And that concludes my remarks. We can take your questions or have EWDD speak as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is an important, another important tool in the box. I'm glad we are reinvigorating it, reestablishing it. What's the, assuming the plan is approved, how soon can we start getting money on the streets?
We're actually ready to start implementing the program as soon as it's approved.
Okay. And can you give us some idea what kind of outreach plan are we planning to get this word out and to encourage folks to participate?
So we are doing a coordinated marketing plan for the department, and we're using our business source centers definitely to do a lot of the outreach. We're also going to be utilizing our business response unit. We get a lot of calls from the different businesses in the city, so we'll be using that as a tool to market the program as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us an idea of the kinds of projects that we will likely be funding?
So this is for funding for different types of operating expenses for businesses. We don't have anything in the pipeline at this time since the program is not being implemented, but do you have any?
So our focus will be in the low to moderate income, communities, businesses, restaurants, stores, small manufacturing firms, any type of that business that are located in.
So this will cover acquisitions if someone's trying to acquire some property?
Sure,
Does it require
that would
capital?
be an eligible activity for sure. Yeah. So real estate, equipment, inventory, and working capital will be the eligible uses of this fund to help these businesses grow and hopefully.
Can you give us an idea what the terms would be, interest rates?
Interest rate is variable depending on the prime, so it's based off of prime.
Okay.
We can go prime plus 2%, or we can go actually below 2%, depending on the deal itself, to make sure that they have the capacity to service the debt. So
Okay,
it's negotiable.
all right. Mrs. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How the eligibility requirements, how similarly are they paralleled to CDFIs and some of the microbusiness loans that they're doing?
Right, so they're very, very similar. Of course, the difference is that the funding comes from the EDA, but we'll be looking at a business that it's in those low to moderate income areas. We're looking for job creation. We're looking for business expansion to help these businesses. We're looking for businesses that cannot access capital through a regular bank.
Right.
When that happens, then we'll be an available source to that business.
The reason for my question is because I want to assure that we are actually competitive with CDFIs, because we don't want to create a revolving loan fund and not have it be utilized. And so there are a number of CDFIs that have been long in existence, even preceding, I think, our program previously being defunct. In terms of the amount of money that we're allocating for this effort, how does that compare to what was allocated previously before the program became defunct in the 90s?
My understanding is that there were several tranches of funding that came over from EDA, and this was based on the historical data that
Sure.
the mayor's office was able to extract, and quite honestly, they weren't able to extract the full information. It was kind of lost, which was part of the problem because the previous program became defunct due to the lack of reporting, just fell off, and because of regular reporting required and that sort of thing, and the tracking, the accounting of the funds as well, just fell off. So my understanding is there were two main grants that they were from EDA historically that they were able to pull the information from, and the total was I think EWDD may be able to speak more as to how we came up with the 4.6 million, but it was based on those two original grants that they were able to get information from, and then EDA has its own formula as to how they calculate the federal share, because there's a match requirement. But since this was reconstructed from a historical, and most of the funding is coming from the city for it.
So the original, we had two grants totaling about 2.4 million.
Okay.
And then there was matching funds, so that's how the amount was, comes up to the 4.6.
And so in addition to when we do grant, some of these micro enterprises for this, for utilization of this fund, do we also provide some of the support services to assure their success in their entrepreneurialism and assure that the business is actually doing well?
Yes, absolutely. We will be using our business source centers to provide the services that they need, for planning, even for the application process. So we will be providing that technical assistance that the businesses will need.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, it appears that there are a number of recommendations that are part of the report that we will approve without objection. And I'd just like to add one additional request, that you report back in 3 months so we can get an update on kind of where things are in terms of the program and projects that we're funding.
Will do.
But
And
with
also,
that-
if I could add,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, any outreach events that are scheduled, that would be
Absolutely.
helpful so that we can make sure that we're getting them out to some of our more critical areas. That would be great.
Right. And just to add to that, we do plan to coordinate with all the council offices to make sure that if there are any events in those areas, that we can participate and disseminate the information to all the
Terrific.
businesses there.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the report, and we look forward to the implementation of this important program to assist our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item.
Well, as items number 2 through 8 were taken on consent, I believe our next item is item number 10, and that's the last one on our agenda.
Okay, so you want to read that one?
Item number 10 is a report from the Economic and Workforce Development Department and the Workforce Development Board. Also, it's we had a recent submittal of a Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the Year 20 Workforce Development Board Annual Plan for Program Year 2019 to 2020.
All right. Who's up first?
Who's up first?
Who's up? You.
Brian Randall with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. I can go ahead and provide an overview of the report on the
Thank you,
policies. Okay. Before you is a report from our office regarding the new policies that are included in the department's 2019-20 annual plan. It has been the practice since program year 2 of the annual plan in 2001 for the department to include policies in the plan which govern the use of Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds. These policies are drafted in response to new city initiatives, state requirements, and to codify operating efficiencies identified by EWDD staff. There are a total of 61 policies in the 2019-20 plan. Of the 61, 27 have been adopted without change and 24 have been revised to make technical changes. The remaining 10 policies are new, subject to council approval, and they are as follows. They are also further detailed in the background section of our report. Number 1, CalJobs request for correction form policy. 2, cash advance policy. 3, disallowed cost resolution and repayment policy. 4, financial reporting procedure. 5, policy to ensure gender equity throughout the workforce development system. 6, indirect cost rate policy. 7, personally identifiable information policy. 8, single audit policy and procedures. 9, stand-in cost policy. And 10, grievance and complaint procedures. Our office recommends approval of these new policies given that they streamline the administration of WIOA funds and provide further clarity to contractors who use these funds to provide workforce development services to city residents. We also recommend that the department be instructed to monitor the impact of the proposed policies and report back on impact to the operators or the department. And that concludes our report, and we can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. The report states that the amount of Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds has been reduced from last year's level, I think around $3 or $4 million. Can you explain the reasons for this reduction and how we're going to be making up for it, or if at all?
I'll defer to the department to answer in further detail, but I believe it's because the funds increase as unemployment in the city goes up, and the funds decrease as unemployment goes down. So I believe that's the primary reason for the reduction. But
Mr. Chair, John Reamer, Interim General Manager, Economic Workforce Development Department, and I'm joined by Robert Sines and Gerardo Vacava of the department. Thank you for allowing us to come and present this annual plan to you. It speaks to the dire need of our city with respect to workforce opportunities and development. I'm pleased to support this and bring it before you in conjunction with Charlie Wu, who's over the Workforce Development Board. We believe that this is going to keep us on a very firm and solid path to providing opportunities. I've shared with this committee when I addressed you on economic development issues that I believe our department is one that helps individuals transition back onto the highway of hope, and that's what workforce development does and job opportunities provides. This plan before you is one that is a partnership in the sense that we provided 30 days for individuals in the community and part of this process to give us input. We went throughout the city and staff did a phenomenal job, and I want to congratulate the members of the Economic Workforce Development Department for reaching out to receive input on things that were needed, things that the community felt that we could do better. Again, our purpose is to usher people back onto a highway of hope. We recognize that we are facing an increasing, unfortunately, attitude and feeling of hopelessness, and this is a tool that we can and should use to address that issue. In the past, we've served over 97,000 individuals, assisted over 28,000 in finding jobs, and that's critically important for us to make sure that not just a job, but a career path for individuals who have many barriers to employment This enables us to be effective in addressing that. Inside of this plan, there are at least 10 action items that we believe will facilitate our being able to do that. I'm going to have to leave, unfortunately, to go to another meeting, but Mr. Sines here is going to walk you through it and answer any questions that you might have. But I wanted to come here today and put my face to the plan to let you know that I'm 100% behind it and that I applaud all who've been involved, your office, and all in the city who've recognized how important it is for us to address workforce development. Yes, we did receive a cut in funding. It's something that has been trending over the years. It's a conversation that the city family will need to have as it relates to how we will address this in a sustainable manner, recognizing that grant funds that have come in through one particular source, in this case WIOA, are starting to shrink. And not just the grant funds themselves starting to shrink, but the requirements for those funds starting to increase. But staff has done a phenomenal job in accessing grant funds in other areas, which I'm sure they will speak to. But it's an issue that we as a city family are going to have to put our arms around and figure out how we can more effectively utilize the resources that we do have to strategically address the problem that we have in this city. So I thank you again for allowing us to come before you, and any questions that you might have, Mr. Sines will be more than capable to answer. And the first one on the table is, how did we lose $3 million?
So thank you, John. And as I've said before to this committee, Mr. Reamer's leadership has been really felt immediately and has allowed us to pull back together to really stabilize our focus and our efforts. As you know, putting together a plan with about $73 million really does take a whole team. So I always like to start the presentation with thanking your offices as well as the CAO's office, the CLA's office, and the City Attorney's office, who all play real critical roles with us to actually bring together a comprehensive plan. This actually saves us time of process, and really we could talk about implementation. To your direct question on the WIOA, Brian did have it right that loosely when unemployment does go down in a particular area, the funds do correspondingly go down with it. However, there is a formula issue that we do want to address with the state, because we do think that it goes down disproportionately for the city of Los Angeles, us being the largest workforce area in the state. We're the second largest in the country. So the reductions actually have a magnifying impact, especially when they have hold harmless for other areas around the state. So with that, this year we had $3 million cut, but over the last 4 years, we have a close to almost a $12.5 million cut in WIOA dollars alone. The good news is that we did pick up other resources and other grants, but that's really to the great efforts of our staff, Gerardo, who leads our team on EWDD, or the Workforce Development Division. But that's going out and raising those dollars. But each of those other grants that we receive have specific outcomes and authorities, and it's much more work, and it's much more complex being able to manage about 30 different grant funding sources versus one large source. So we are addressing it back at the state. We've enlisted the mayor's office, and we will enlist the CLA's office to help us address on the policy issue that there is a need to do more established formula dollars and general fund type dollars from the state to actually serve those with the greatest need. Part of our strategic goals, and as John mentioned, we have 10 major goals with the Workforce Development Board. Number one is about homelessness and preventing folks from entering homelessness. Employment is one of your biggest and best barriers from preventing homelessness. So what we could do to help divert folks and the efforts that we've been doing around our centers, it's a system-wide effort, it's a team effort, and we've been working very, very closely with LASA, with LA County, and all of our other team to actually engage private employers to address this goal.
Can I ask a quick question? My apologies. I just had a quick question. When you reference the formula and seemingly inequitably we are being impacted, what are the contributing factors to that in the way that it's currently structured, and perhaps how it affects other municipalities and compared to ours?
So for two pools of the dollars, there's about 4 different dollars that make up WIOA, but for 2 of the pools, the state has hold harmless for other workforce areas. So meaning that they're going to get a chunk of the dollars dollars, no matter what the overall pool is. And because there's less dollars available in the pool, we end up taking less for two of those funding sources. So overall, our budget actually shows a slight increase of about $700,000 from last year. But again, these are some very specific type of dollars that we were able to successfully bring down, and does take away our flexibility for running our direct centers. So I just wanted to point that out.
Of course, the Trans Rural identifies vulnerable populations as a real target for these services. Talk a little bit about how, I guess, our workforce centers, youth source centers are going to be implemented to get the word out about these services, programs, help to prepare folks to take advantage of them. How do we sort of close that?
I would love to start with our youth source center system. As you know, we have 14 centers that see about 6,500 folks a year, but it's very specific. It's not just any young folks. We specifically have been working with LASA to identify folks coming through their service centers, working with probation department to identify the young folks who have been in the juvenile justice system, working with DCFS and our foster youth populations, our pregnant teen population, which is another major contributing factor, especially for young women who stop going to school, to get them back to school. So our efforts has been a partnership at each one of those centers that bring in various funding sources directed to those target populations. We have three objectives. One is to get them back to school in an education and to get at least their high school degree, but not to stop there, to get something more advanced. Second is to get employment and to start building that career pipeline for them. And third is really to talk about their social service and housing welfare. What can we do to leverage other resources? Some of our great partnerships is the one in your districts, CRCD and El Proyecto are two major operators that actually bring together many of those partners to be able to service this particular population. On our adult side, we've been working very specifically with REDF, which we have talked about with our program with LA Rise, that has been very specific, working with the homeless, the formerly homeless population, and again, it's leveraging the other resources that are available to them. We will be kicking off with the mayor's office with each Bridge Home site to have direct services at all 15 sites throughout the city. We got an initial kickstart, so thank you very much through the budget process for $1 million. But we want to leverage that initial $1 million to be able to very specifically target the Bridge Home participants. The other major emphasis is that we'll be implementing this year is a prison to employment project. So we received $2.5 million or $2.8 million from the state that we're working in a regional collaborative that's going to target 282 folks who are coming out of the prison system. And we also have an internal goal that 50% will be women. So we want to make our gender equity policy that Brian talked about real. And so in all of our efforts, we want to see gender equity in our implementation. We're working with Amity Foundation as well as State Parole to very specifically work with this particular population.
You mentioned the prison to
employment.
You're right, the prison pipeline, and working with foster youth. Any other populations that we're focusing on this time that we have not done in the past?
Domestic violence. So that one is a plan that we're still working out. So domestic violence victims, we've been working with HCID and the Commission for the Status of Women, the Workforce Development Board, and ourselves. We want to implement, or we will implement this year, a process that every participant in the domestic violence emergency housing will have the opportunity confidentially to impact employment, and we'll do that partnership between our employment centers and the domestic violence providers. There's approximately about 1,400 women that come through that project. We know not everybody's going to go into employment, but we think we could actually impact a vast majority of them.
And also, I think there'll be an opportunity to impact the street vendors as they come on with our licensing program. And I know it's something that you've been looking at. But again, if we can incorporate that assistance at this level, I think would be also very helpful.
That's a great recommendation.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, listen, we will accept we'll approve the CLA and the EWDD report recommendations. Thank you for your efforts and your commitment. We look forward to a
Thank you for your support.
exciting progress on this as we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, anything else before us at this time?
No, the desk is clear.
Desk is clear. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.